See, now that was a countdown. What Will did last week, you don't even want to know. It was like, he said, I'm going to do this, and then he didn't do that, and then, anyway.
See, this is why you need me.
Yeah, there you go. Welcome everyone into the Nutmeg Tavern. This is Friday. I hope you have had a tremendous week like I have. I've been on fire, in a good way, all week long. I've got some wonderful warm tea because it's freezing in here today. I don't know what's going on. And we're going to have a great live stream today talking about a topic that is very apropos and a topic that people have asked about in the past. People are interested in the topic and it's lots of fun. I am joined today by Lauren, who is in the chat.
Hello.
And Ivy with a new last name on the console.
Hi, everyone.
And there she is. Super. Thank you to everyone who's hopping in here to live stream. Hopefully everybody's crowding into the tavern. It is nice and warm and dry in here, and so I hope you enjoy the time today. We are going to be talking about what's happening with 18th century marriages and weddings specifically. And it'll be fun. It's really a fascinating topic because of the diversity of what's going on in the time period. Even within this, kind of actually, we think of as sort of a monolithic culture of the 13 colonies, and it's very much not that. So, it's going to be great. I'll say this right at the top of the hour and hopefully somebody will remind me, maybe you guys can remind me. Mrs. Sinawa, 1812, Marion, Indiana, is happening. That event is happening this weekend. If you're in this area at all, it didn't happen last year because of site issues, and they bought new land. They're going to have it in a new place. It's supposed to be going to be great. So make sure to remember about the 1812 event. You can find the link in the comment section in the chat thingy blobber down there, where you can click a something and it'll take you someplace and you'll be able to read about it. So make sure to do that. Anything else I need to cover? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's start talking about this. Oh, and if you're interested, see all those mugs? Look at that. Somebody set all these mugs up, and they're not filled with beer or anything. These are all the mugs that we currently have available on our website that are like Nutmeg Tavern mugs, or needs more Nutmeg mugs, or Nutmeg Traders, or anyway, all these are available. So people got married in the 18th century. And as much as we know about things like common law marriages and whatnot, seems like most people got married in some kind of official way. A lot of people, okay, I don't know if I should say most. A lot of people got married in some kind of official kind of way, right? And it's one of the ways that we know some people, their lives as recorded by history is like nowhere else. Right? It's like we have records of they got married. And it's one of the few ways that we know about them from officialdom in the 18th century. In fact, if it wasn't for the diary of Martha Ballard, she only showed up in official records in one or two tiny little places. And one of them was she gets married to this one person on this one day, and that was it. And we have this wonderful diary. We know all about this person and what they did, and if it wasn't for that diary, the only thing we would know about her was, she was just married on this date. She was born this day. That's about it. Maybe not even when she died. So marriage is important for that. Sometimes it's all we know. The marriage customs of the individual cultures that make up the 13 colonies, and I'm talking about just the English cultures, not the French or Spanish or Native American or enslaved African or whatever cultures, but just those English-based cultures, the Puritans that go into New England, the folks that go into Virginia, the Quakers, and the backcountry Scots-Irish all have very different concepts of what this whole marriage, the courtship and the marriage and what that is like. They're all so different and so interesting, especially the differences between them. So if we look at, and he did a great job in the Albion Seed book. He goes in depth in marriage customs, and it's funny because it gets bigger and bigger, like the section. So he writes the part for the Puritans, and it fits on one page, and then he writes the section about Virginia marriage customs, and it's page and a half. And then Quakers is 2 pages. And then by the time he gets to the back country, is like 4 pages of information about what goes on there. And part of that's because he can compare and contrast to what he's talked about before. But mostly, I don't know whether he just gets excited about that or not. Or they get more interesting as you go, right? So the Puritan and the New England marriage customs are kind of simplistic, and I'm not sure which one is really the closest to what we do today, or at least what I know of as our marriage customs.
Right,
at
like
least around
maybe
here.
it still differs regionally.
Right.
And we're quite used to ours, and we would be surprised if we went somewhere like on the East Coast or on the West Coast or something.
So in New England, they have this. They have a contract or a contraction, and think of though there's a contract, a marriage contract, and we'll see images where they talk about this idea of they're called the marriage contract, but there are you talk to the pastor ahead of time. There's the sort of walking out or coming out, which is having to do with, let's see. Well, I don't know exactly what was meant by that. I guess it's when the bride sort of has some concept of what she wants the pastor to preach on. And so she has input to that during the actual marriage ceremony. Let's see. There is the kind of idea of it's like people that are accompanying you for the wedding. There has to be sort of the posting of the bands. Now this gets more sort of solidified in the Anglican tradition, but here they're still doing it in New England. This idea that there's a public announcement about what's going on, and it has to be done a certain number of days, like 3 Sundays ahead of time. So in case there's somebody who's like, what's going on here?
Well, right, like this person's already married,
right.
or
who knows, right? So there's that, which there are some of these traditions that are turned this on its head. Crazy, but this you definitely want to talk about this beforehand and do the bands, or else you have a disorderly marriage. In other words, you can't just elope, and that's disorderly, and it's bad. And the wedding is performed at home by the magistrate in a simple civil ceremony. Now, some of these traditions are very much, this is part of the church, and other ones are very much no, this is a very civil ceremony, sort of, not directly connected with the church. There are no holy vows or wedding rings. Right? because they disapproved of that, the Puritans specifically. And there are like simple questions, it's like, and say yes. Do you do this? Are you going to do this? Yes. Da, da, da. So very kind of simple vows. And then a small celebration after the wedding. Not a great feast. Definitely not a lot of drinking and no dancing. So this isn't, it isn't a lot like what we do, a typical American wedding. Extravagant displays, that's a vain wedding. You're trying to, bring all this attention on you when you shouldn't. When that's exactly the opposite of today. We want lots of attention. It's all about, X, Y, Z. They don't talk about special clothing except for after the wedding, right? So not for the wedding itself. So very interesting. And then he goes on to specifically to the Virginia, or Southern colonies kind of traditions, and those are much more just basically copy and paste from the Anglican tradition, or what you're seeing in like Southern England, etc. And this is a lot more church oriented. It's a lot more of a party, a lot more ceremony here. You're still going to find the idea of the bands, that the clergy of Virginia were forbidden to conduct any marriage without the prior publication of banns. You got to tell people this is going to happen. So obviously if there's issues, people can bring it up. Clandestine marriages were punishable by imprisonment. No clandestine marriages. Both New England and Virginia, the classic time for weddings is in early November, which is odd because that was when I was married, but that was just...
It wasn't. It was
the time, right? And sometimes we talk about there are other things where we've seen where weddings were popular also during right in the Christmas season, because families already coming together, and so you would have weddings right there in early January. Again, not a typical time for us. Certainly to have weddings here. And this also says late December after Christmas. Vows could not be exchanged during Lent. So there were definitely times when it was like, this isn't the time for that. Church weddings were solemnized in a church sometimes, or more often in the bride's home, and they use, here's one of these, they're going to use the standard Book of the Common Prayer wedding, right? Just like same words every time. Here's the vows, here's that. We know exactly. It's like we've seen it all on TV, right? It's like this is how a wedding works. That's all right out of the Book of Common Prayer, and that's typical. Other ceremony was an ancient pagan practice of the jumping over a broomstick. Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting. And the typical big wedding party after the wedding feast. Here is a description from the late 17th century by a French traveler who's in Gloucester County, Virginia, and here is what he says. He says, there were at least 100 guests, many of social standing and handsome, well-dressed ladies. Although it was November, we ate under the trees. The day was perfect. We were 24 at the first table. They served us so copiously with meats of all kinds that I am sure there would have been enough for a regiment of 500 soldiers. It is the custom to take only one meal upon such occasions at 2:00 in the afternoon. They caroused all night long, and when it was day, and then ... I did not see one who could stand straight. So, you can see that some of the Puritan ideas about wedding are actually a rejection of this. You know, they see excesses here, and they're trying to reform this idea of a wedding. So very interesting. There are some. I mean, this kind of gets out of the scope of this, but there are very different ideas here within these different cultural things about who you're marrying and why you're marrying that person. And Virginia, it's not, I love them. You know, it's not as much that. Whereas some of these other traditions are, you're only going to be married to somebody that you know that, you know, you really have affection for. It's not necessarily what's going on here in Virginia. A lot more of the, well, these two families, we're gonna put them together, and you two are gonna get married. You know,
right? Like it's very much a business transaction,
right? In
a lot of cases,
at least much more
yes.
a business transaction. We don't want to say
right, and that's not to say that it wasn't more of a business transaction than it is than we think of it as now for the Puritans and the Quakers. Like that was something they had, I think, more on their mind. Right. But of the four that we're talking about, the Virginians were probably the most. That was the focus a little bit more.
You want to jump in with any questions? I thought I would save these two for a little bit. I can maybe go into some images, but if you've got anything you would jump in with.
Okay, so one of the very common questions is whether someone's getting married. So I thought you might want to give people context about why we're talking about it today.
Yeah, so the topic, of course, is because Ivy has just been married.
We can show the picture.
We can. Can you bring it up?
Hold on. Here we go.
Ta-da! There's Ivy and Val coming out from being married. We did a outdoor wedding. Last week we showed the picture of the dance.
Right.
This week here's the picture of the bride and groom, the new Mr. and Mrs. Val Yorka. Mm-hmm. There we go.
And because it's been something that we've been working on for the last, month and a half, it's been on our minds, so we're like, why not a wedding live stream?
Exactly. So that's, what else do we have? And we'll touch on that more later.
There were some, okay, hold on. I wrote down my questions. Okay, somebody was wondering about the Puritans, about how, if they didn't have rings, how people knew that they were married. And someone else suggested that they probably had specific clothing, that some kind of specific dress. I don't actually know what it might have been, but that was my thought too, that they probably changed dress when they were married to signal that.
There's a possibility of that, but I have not seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you're in community, you would be more aware of it, but I'm still don't know for sure.
And the other thing about a lot of these is these specific, what we're seeing here, what I'm talking to, what he's the author here in Albion Seed is speaking to specifically, is especially for the Puritans and the folks in Virginia, are 17th century customs. And they do morph and get softer and more blended as you go into the 18th century. Now, the Quakers come in, some in the 17th century, a lot more into the 18th century. And the backcountry, Scots-Irish is definitely an 18th century, say, immigration into North America. So these specific traditions are more specifically 18th century. But some of these, like the idea that the clothing might be different, that might well be true in the 17th century, but probably not so much in the 18th century. And they're going to adopt some of these other, they're going to blend in some of these other things, like wedding rings might be more popular in New England by the time you get to the 18th century than they were in the 17th century.
Mm-hmm. Oh, somebody was wondering if we all wore period outfits at the wedding.
You know, as much as we had to do with the everything else with the wedding, and the idea that this wasn't like all Townsend's, right? we had to let other people, and they would have thought that was weird. And I don't think Val wanted to wear, knee breeches.
So
A lot of head shaking over here.
No.
So that wasn't what we did. There are some folks, like particularly 2 reenactors that are getting married, and they want to have a period wedding, and I can see that. And then sometimes people just like the look of the 18th century, and they'll have an 18th century wedding, even though they're not reenactors. They just think it's really, really
it
neat,
looks great.
right?
Well, somebody had asked me that, and I'm like, oh, like it really hadn't occurred to me when we were doing the planning. But I was thinking that a lot of people I know of who have done them, it's because they met at an event, and like it's such a fun, like because they met there, it's which wasn't where Ivy and Val met, but I do love the idea of having an 18th century wedding.
And there's Alma saying she's shocked that Ivy is getting married. Yeah, a lot of people, they see Ivy from, some of those early videos when she's little itty bitty. And, we've been doing the YouTube channel for 15 years. And so you've seen Ivy grow up on the channel. And now, we see her actually married, which is pretty crazy. Just ask me.
There's a super chat here from Max Sarkle. Happy Friday to everyone in the tavern, and congrats, Ivy. Okay.
Are we good? We're going to jump in? Okay. Here we go. Let's look at some pictures. These are all over the place, time period wise. A lot of them are very early. This is Dutch, right? Probably 17th century. But what?
Val's in the chat. He said, I just got married a couple weeks ago, too.
Oh, what a... Anyway. Anyway, 17th century Dutch painting. And we see, so the European traditions, obviously they're all, differing, but we have some of that same thing going on here. It's a big party. We can see, if you look in the, not quite center back, in the gold is probably the bride back there. And lots of people eating and drinking, and we've got dancing going on and the music being played, and we can see this being played out in a lot of the different cultures here in the 18th century, and probably today too, right? Not that far from some people's weddings,
right?
No doubt, or at least the party afterwards. Again, similar situation. And although I don't know exactly where, which one is necessarily bride in this one. Maybe she's the person who's dancing that we can see most obviously. Hard to say, but they got some kind of dance going on. Somebody got music playing. This is obviously early, maybe even 16th century by some of the clothing. But again, just so similar to what's happening. These traditions aren't changing so much that we can't recognize them. I'm not sure if was there any particular detail you thought about in this one?
Just
Okay,
we're here to party.
I like the fact that the little keg is on wheels, so you wheel it out and put another one on and wheel it back in. Probably they had to do that a couple times. Anyway, here is a European, although it's exactly the same, style-wise, what you would see in a mid to mid-late, maybe 1770s, because of the woman's dress
I thought
here.
Because of his sleeve cuffs, it might be a bit earlier.
Right, but
I don't know that it was dated.
I don't think those hip hoop things are that early.
Yeah, good point.
So
that's true.
this idea that the bride and the groom are kind of matching, that they have special clothing. Now, this is one of the things I wanted to talk about, is the idea of we tend to have special clothing, right? We'll have tuxedos and a special wedding dress and I don't think for most people in the lower classes or even the middling classes would do that. They would just have nice clothes. Wear your best clothes, right? Wear your Sunday go to meeting outfit. But we're seeing very high class, very, very rich people. You know, the richest upper crust having special clothing. That might not be, or that might be very, very typical for them. Yes, I had this made special for the wedding. And we have, I mean, as always, we try to adopt what the upper classes are doing, and that's what we have done over the last 200 years. It's like, well, you know, the king and the queen had special outfits made for the wedding, and then the duke does, and then, you know, rich people do, and then pretty soon, you know, so over time, that's gotten to be a tradition now. It's like, no, I'm going to have this dress made. We're doing the things that only kings and queens would do, right? So that's one of the reasons why we don't see wedding dresses per se, except in the very, very rich, because, you know, that was one of the things they could do. It wasn't just standard tradition for everyone.
Right. Like, I'm not sure for the last picture. The description was in a different language, so I don't know what it said, but I would not be surprised if this was the king and the queen, right? Like, that's highly likely.
Well, they would have lace and everything. So this isn't quite that, but it's pretty close. And it's likely that on the gentleman's coat here, most of that decoration, that's all hand embroidered. That isn't like woven into the fabric with some machine or anything. Somebody's doing every single bit of that by hand. Now, the lady's dress probably has some of that going on too, especially with all the trim, but the rest of it is, well, I may be wrong. It might all be hand done, but I mean, sometimes you'll see some things from the 18th century and you'll think, that's insane, right? It's like, who would put that many man hours?
Yes.
Very highly talented man hours into, you know, a dress. Yeah, they'll do it. Making our extravagance look like peanuts.
So somebody's asking, did the white wedding dress tradition originate with Queen Victoria? And that's what I had heard too. But when I was looking at the dresses and depictions of people, I saw a lot of white or pale colors and of the dresses that did survive as wedding dresses. So she may have like solidified it, but it seems like these pale dresses or white dresses were around before as a concept.
Now, you know, they're saying this was a wedding dress, right?
Yes.
But it's likely not a wedding dress that she would never have worn for anything else.
Right. Like, it seems like
she may have had it made for a wedding.
Yes.
And then she continued to wear it in nicer situations. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like, you know, today we'll have wedding dresses that you just wouldn't wear anywhere else. That's not going to work for a party.
That's right.
Right? Whereas they're not doing that. They're not having that made, and it's really only appropriate for that one particular setting. So there we go. So here's something a little bit more typical American. Obviously, it's not quite so, what is going on? Like some of those other European outfits. This is European, but it's titled the marriage contract or the wedding contract, having to do with it being a lot more of a business transaction than we might typically expect today. And she looks just happy. Everybody's so happy about this going on here. Just exciting, party. Joking here. It's called being satire and all that. So there's that. This image is a classic image that we would see, right? Two people getting married. Now there's not a big bunch of people here. This is a sort of a private wedding. This is an illustration from a picture, from a story. So it's probably a little atypical. The story is atypical because it was frowned upon even in England to just have these like a special marriage or a marriage that's happening that's, unpublished. But I think that's maybe what's sort of being alluded to here. That this isn't, that it's like, well, we're just, going to have this wedding thing going on. But we see a very nice outfit for him, a nice outfit for her, and very few people to witness this. So obviously, it's probably a little on the strange side. The laws in Great Britain changed in the 18th century to specifically make it so that people couldn't get married without their parents' permission. And this may be just before that, or talking about, a story about maybe people without permission.
Yeah.
It has to do with the ages of folks, and again, there are different traditions with different sort of cultures here. Isn't this one medieval? Or early?
I believe that
Late
it was.
medieval.
It's like
Yeah.
this is an example of a post-medieval, pre-19th
right.
century ring. So it's a little hard to date them, right? Because they don't have the date on them, right? And they're gold, so they,
Right,
it's a little hard to
exactly.
say.
It's like nobody's writing it.
But like based on the inscription, they're thinking this is probably an 18th century one.
Okay, there we go.
And they kind of have this. They're like, okay, people did exchange rings, not just at weddings, but in
Right.
other scenarios too. But they did exchange this kind of ring at weddings.
Right. And the writing here is on the inside. This is not, this isn't one ring to bind them all. That's fire writing, and that's on the outside. That's a totally different idea here. This is regular writing on the inside. And do we know what it says?
I do not recall. It did. There was a. It was
Something
a
very
translated
touching, no
poem.
doubt.
I'm sure it was. I don't recall what it said.
I needed a picture for the thumbnail that really just set it in a nice
Of
tight
course.
way, and this just did it. So that's why I chose this particular one. So there we go. We've seen this image before, and I thought there was a color version. Maybe not. We've used the image of the musicians before.
Yes.
Like all by itself. But this is sort of a wedding going on here, 18th century. Again, we've got the people. Of course, somebody's there in the foreground pouring drinks, and hello, it's going on the ground. She's watching the dance instead of what she's doing here. Regardless, do we know about the person who's standing and orating on the one side?
I don't know.
Maybe he's calling the dance. Who knows? But dance going on, and some kind of a wedding party. I don't see, especially even in the images, just giant wedding parties. I mean, this person in Virginia was talking about 100 people. Like, this was huge.
Yeah.
We have more. 100 people's not a massive wedding for today.
No.
But that's enough. Let me tell you.
I mean, if you have to travel,
yeah,
it
would be hard to do.
Yeah, it would be much harder. Like, for instance, a lot of the people who were able to make it to, the wedding we had, if they had been that distance and they needed to bring a carriage, they wouldn't have been able to make it. But
everyone came in a carriage.
yes, that's how everyone arrived. But chances are that people have been less far flung.
Yeah.
So.
Every week I try to get to the brand new Patreon and YouTube members, and I just have YouTube members. I don't have any new Patreon folks. But here are the new and renewing YouTube members. Dustin Decker, Bad Idea Lab, Dennis Ponce, Northern Wolf, Dan, Jay Sanders, Angie Dudas, let's see, then Marcia De Palma, David Collar of Casper Coins and Jewelry, Marie Karen, Kimberly Cook, and Laurel Tucker. So super thank you to the folks who support us so directly that it helps us make sure that we try to be here every single week for you. So thank you so much for that. especially you Patreon folks. Do you want to jump back in with any particular things?
Yes. Do you remember what that last picture? Do you remember what that kind of art, what the art style is? How it's made?
Oh.
Like a copper plate or?
It's probably just your standard
Etching?
aquatint engraving of the time period.
Engraving. Yeah,
Yes.
because that detail is hard to do. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to do by hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a super chat from Speed and Style Tony. Was it taboo to get married to somebody from a different culture?
I don't. Taboo's not the word. It's just not typical. Yes, and it really depends on the tradition here, but it's just not, because they didn't mix as much. Your opportunities to find a possible spouse within a different culture group are a lot slimmer. So today we live in such a metropolitan, or cosmopolitan is the word I want to use, a cosmopolitan society. We rub elbows and we have business connections with, or interactions with people from a lot of different cultures. We don't live in a much more monocultural situation. And so we don't see that. We don't see the mixing of cultures and people getting married as a strange thing, but they would have, depending on the situation. So like I'll read later on here about Quakers, and you do not get married out of the Quaker church unless you want to be kicked out of the Quaker church.
Right, like if you do that, it usually means kind of practically, if not on purpose, leaving your community behind.
Right.
So
right.
a lot of people they didn't want to do that.
The kind of exception to that would be the amount of people on the frontier that are mixing cultures.
Yeah.
Now that might be because you're basically in another culture. So, the French marrying Native Americans, or, just regular, whoever going out on the frontier and marrying Native Americans. There's some of that. There's just not as much of it, though. And that's one of the reasons was that it's very likely that it was frowned upon by a lot of the culture around it. So you really had to be, it depends on where you were at as to how appropriate that was, how common it was.
Okay, so this is a super chat from Eric Barlow. The 245th anniversary of the Battle of Kings Mountain will be held on October 7th, and there will also be events this weekend, the 4th and the 5th. So
Kings Mountain is down in
okay, so this is Kings Mountain in South Carolina.
South Carolina. So make sure to check that out. If there's a link there you can find,
Yes,
maybe you can toss
I'm
it up.
Yeah,
Very exciting. Very exciting.
And really, for everybody, this is the kind of weather that everyone uses to have outside events.
Yep.
So if you ever you're like, I should go to an event, this is the perfect time to be looking for one.
So let's get to Quakers really quick, or else I'm going to run out of time before we get to the fun one. So not that Quakers aren't necessarily fun. Anyway, so the Quaker tradition, since a lot of this is sometimes, especially in the Anglican tradition, religious, sometimes in the Puritan tradition, sort of anti what the Anglicans were doing. The Quakers were definitely anti everybody else. It's like, if that's what they're doing, that's wrong, so we're going to do it completely differently. And the Quaker concept here in 17th and 18th century, and it's probably specifically more so in the late 17th century, was one where this was a lot more about community than it was about the people getting married. So you asked permission from the women's committee, and then the men's meeting would meet, and they would decide whether or not that was proper. If the person was from outside of your meeting, then you would have to get you would get information from the meeting that they came from, and so everybody everybody was deciding whether this was an appropriate match. You could try to say that's what you wanted to do, but they could veto it. And the parents had a huge say. Yes, no, that's what's going on here with the Quaker thing. So this could take weeks and weeks to figure out on the front end. And then the ceremony was just like, what? What? The marriage ceremony is a lot like the Quaker meeting of the time period. Everybody would solemnly come into the building and sort of sit down and quietly wait, and someone might say something or not. And then the two people would sort of exchange their vows. There's nobody presiding. They just exchange their vows, which they make up, whatever they think is appropriate. And then, okay, we're done. And then everybody leaves. No big party, none of that. Nope. Undoubtedly no special clothing. Oh, no. None of that. So it's like turn the whole thing on its head. And
that was very much on purpose.
Right. Right. There was like, no, this is, that. And they married much later in life, probably because of some of these. It's like everybody's permission in the world and whatever. So, very different tradition. There's a lot more to it. But the crazy tradition. So after we get these three traditions, then you get to the Scots-Irish and the backcountry tradition, and it's like craziness. Right? So what is one of the common threads in 17th and early 18th century and bleeds into the 18th century and even later is bride abduction. That's what's going on with the backcountry. Take all these other ideas. You couldn't get any farther away from the Quaker tradition than you can with the backcountry. They must have thought they were just complete heathens, right? So it's like, yeah, we're gonna go steal a bride. Sometimes not voluntarily, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like sometimes they were stealing the bride, but I hopefully the vast majority of it is that it's like a play, right?
Yeah, later on in the 18th
stealing
century, it becomes a play. So they would get this whole posse together, and they'd be shooting guns, and they'd be going from house to house and whooping it up and drinking, and then they would snatch up the wife, and there would be another group like the bride's side, which would have their posse, and they'd be going around and trying to ambush them, and it was
like
crazy.
Capture the Flag or something.
Yeah, it was just nuts. It was like a crazy party, and then they would have the wedding, and then it was a total blowout with who knows who getting shot and everything. It was just insane. So he starts off though talking specifically about. We're talking about Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson. Who, to be president, Andrew Jackson. His to-be wife was unhappily married to another man, and he threatens the husband and steals the wife. Basically, threatens the husband, said he would cut the ears out of his head, and then. There was the suitor, he gets arrested. The suitor, Andrew Jackson, turns on the husband with a butcher knife in his hand at some point and chases him into the canebrake. Even though he gets arrested, the complaint gets dismissed because of the absence of the plaintiff. The guy leaves town because he's scared, and so Andrew Jackson wins the case and marries this person who's still married to I don't even know. This is just the nutsiest story. And this is in either the late 18th century, early 19th century. So, this was part of the presidential race. So people were like, this guy is nuts, and look what he did, and all this. And of course, the backcountry part of everybody's like, yeah, that's cool. He he saw something bad going on. He wanted that wife, and so he went and got her. What's the problem with that? So, the traditions are so interestingly varied, even within this very close set of people. All these, and it shows up here more than a lot of places. All these cultures were all in this tiny, England, Great Britain area. And they come over and they plant themselves in North America, and then they start to blend into what we know as our wedding traditions today. I find them fascinating. I don't know, some of them get lost along the way. I mean, probably thank goodness we don't have a lot of bride snatching going on. I mean, and maybe that could lead to stuff. But all of them have little seeds of what goes on as what we expect for a wedding in North America today. Just crazy stuff.
Okay, let me find, I know there's one more super chat, hold on. Okay, were wedding anniversaries celebrated at the time?
I doubt to any great extent.
Yeah, I think there was one thing that I saw, it was a loving cup. So I think it was Dutch German, right, origin, and I think it was like an anniversary present. But I think that's one of the only ones that I saw that kind of had that feel to it. Just like birthdays. Birthdays being Dutch German too, the kind of origin. So they seem to really like parties. But that during, at least in the 18th century, that hasn't quite worked itself out into a lot of the other cultures.
Right.
Okay. All right, I think we're pretty caught up.
So what do you think, Ivy? Would you have picked up any of these traditions? Did we miss out?
I think that one dress was pretty great.
Yeah, I think I should have worn that one.
Well, I mean, we've seen like the hoop skirts of the Civil War, but these hoops just go sideways. I don't know how you make it. You got to like turn sideways, go through a doorway or
I
whatever.
guess.
And I don't know how you get any, like your husband, to walk beside you. Like,
I don't know.
You can walk in front, I guess.
Right,
I mean.
ever so slightly to the front.
No, the idea of having to kind of whoop it up and go from house to house, and sounds.
That sounds kind of. I think the play aspect of that sounds kind of fun.
Yeah.
Okay, did we get through all our pictures?
No, I didn't. We didn't get through all our pictures. This is a marriage license. Now, this is, was this in the United States or is that actually European?
I believe that this was in the Pennsylvania archive, so I believe it's Pennsylvania.
So it's Dutch probably, but Pennsylvania marriage license. They illustrated it, and they made it its own thing.
Yes, they did.
It's official and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And like you can still get these today. You can have
Yeah.
somebody make you one. Like a lot of them are baptismal or birth certificates, but also wedding ones. And there are people who do them. And you can commission one.
Do you remember what's her what the artist's name is?
I think it started with a V.
Oh well, there we go.
I know. There's somebody who
Does things like
does stuff
this,
at
yeah.
Five Metals, and she
Right.
you'll see her do art there, and she does this type of thing. It's very, very fun,
Right.
and sometimes she's not just displaying the art there, but doing it there. It's very fun to watch.
Yeah, very folk arty, and it's very beautiful and fun. This is another. So notice the outfit here and the setting. Now this is probably the after party with the impromptu tents that we see so often in these. It's just like, well, we use this big hunk of fabric and it's our tent. We have musicians and we have the classic outfits. This may be their dance. There are some of them have a very dance tradition. Obviously
Yeah.
not the Quakers. Obviously not the Puritans. But I'll bet there's a lot of dancing going on at those backcountry houses.
And I'm sure the Virginia ones, yeah.
Yeah, and the Virginia ones. So, but notice the outfits here, and people looking on in this after celebration. This is a 19th century image of what somebody thought that George Washington's wedding looked like. And this is the Anglican tradition of getting married, right? So this particular one is in a church, and we have, it being solemnized, much more dignified. The crazy parties afterwards.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
But here is now, there's some hit and miss here a little bit with some of the clothing and whatnot, because he would have been married. This is probably the clothing they're hitting seems to be a little bit later than when he was married.
Right. It is very funny to me to look at this and you're like, you can see the 19th century influence on what they're depicting.
Exactly. It's like, well, if they would have studied a little bit harder, they would have been slightly different with the clothing, but that's all right. I'm going to say they did a great job. And probably, depicting what's going on in the church and exactly what that was looking like. There we go, 1657, and this one is pointing out the throwing of birdseeder rice.
Yeah, that's why I brought this one in. I was wondering about that tradition when looking at this, and from what I was reading about, it seems like it's quite ancient, and that there would have been some cultures that would have been doing it at times during the 17th and 18th century. Maybe got more popular during the 19th century.
Right.
But it was nice to see it here because it's certainly something we connect with weddings.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Although, it's going out of favor and other things are taking its place.
Yeah, right. Like people are like, something, bubbles. Bubbles are...
Right. And we had sparklers.
Yes, we did.
That way everybody could get burnt.
No one was injured as far as I'm aware in the sparkler send-off.
This one I really liked. This one's Scottish. It's all the way into 1832. Although he's copying an artist from a decade or two earlier.
Yes.
So I think Wilkes is actually in the very early 19th century, and this is supposed to be the penny wedding, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So there were specifically in the Scottish tradition. So maybe it blends into the backcountry. Maybe not. This you would actually pay to go to the reception, and maybe if you just want to go to a party.
Yeah.
So
sure.
But it helps pay for the costs of this entire crazy big party. So there would be some you got to pay to get on. Pay to get in. Maybe we
probably for the drinks mostly.
Maybe we need to redo that tradition. I don't know. It's like, weddings are pretty expensive. You want to come, you need to cough up a little bit to help us, buy the lights or the drinks in this case. So, but dancing going on. We got artists or we got musicians here and people dressed up, and it's probably our bride and groom there in the sort of foregroundy thing going on.
I think so.
Yep. 1809, even though I think they're portraying an earlier time period here, and this looks a bit more specifically European, but we have some of the traditional sort of decorations going on, and notice a dance floor kind of specifically for this. There are parts of the floor here that are dirt, and then there's the spot where they're on. I like the musical group. We have violin and triangle.
Well,
Ding,
there you
ding,
go.
ding, ding. I want to play that. I think I could play a triangle.
I'm sure, absolutely.
I'd probably be bad at that too. The classic birdcage that we see all the time. People with the food in the background. So we have, dancing, we have the meal, we have music, we have just all kinds of things going on in this wedding celebration. Classic Highland Scots dance and wedding celebration. Not a lot of people here.
No, this one doesn't show a big crowd. That's true, right? Maybe this is more of a standard size of the wedding in the time period.
Maybe. Or, maybe it's just because the artist
Maybe,
didn't
yeah,
want to
maybe
paint
the
a whole
artist
bunch
didn't
of
want to
people.
draw all sorts of people.
It's like, well,
That would be me.
so this, is so much more kind of typical of what we see if we see Jane Austen,
Yes.
right? And people getting married. This is what we expect to see. We have a white dress here.
Yeah.
It's not crazy.
No, like this, what she's
Right?
wearing looks something
Pretty
she
much
might wear
typical.
every day,
Right.
even just as
Exactly.
her best, one of her best dresses.
We don't have a lot of, onlookers. They're coming out of the church. We see the carriage waiting for them to take them away. Probably no tin cans, tied to the back of
Probably
it.
not.
Probably not. But a bit more classically what we think of sometimes when we see things. And then there we are back again. Notice the similarities there with the this is the kind of illustration that we see of not the ceremony itself, but this says
Send off.
they're married. So there we go. So much fun with a topic like this, and so in depth, and it really says a lot about the individual cultures. It's one of those like mini pictures that will tell you a lot about the rest of what's going on with their culture, as to what a marriage looks like, what the courtship part looks like, etc.
Right, you can see it's like a miniaturized piece of the personality of the culture.
Exactly.
Yeah. I do have there's a super chat here from Botanic Stone. Congratulations.
Yes.
All right, I think we're all
Okay, so make sure if you are interested, we have these wonderful mugs. Lauren, if you want to drop a
Will
link
do.
in there to help support what we do. Also, I will be at Mrs. Sinawa 1812 on Saturday and Sunday. If you want to come by and shake hands and say hi, you can do that, and I will be there. If you are too shy to do it, and I see you out there looking like you might want to come talk to me, I will just go and just talk to you. Because I know some people, they get all shy.
It's
all of
always
a
best to
sudden.
bring a friend, and then your friend can drag you out. That's always a great way
That's
to do
right.
it. Yeah.
That's right. But feel free to come by and say hi. I am not that scary in person, really. I'm not. And is there anything else I need to grab?
No.
Okay. Congratulations, Ivy. Thank you, everyone. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say thank you. That's all.
Very good. Thank you, everyone, for your incredible support for what we do here in the live stream and on the channel in general. This week's video on Sunday will be about taverns. So last week we talked about tavern life. I went ahead and just used a lot of that information and more, so it's going to be even better. Aaron did a tremendous job on this week's video, so make sure to check that out. I don't think I need to connect with anything else particular, but I hope you folks have. No, I'm not going to record any on my 70. Anyway, thank you for everything you do, especially sharing our channel with other people. That's how a lot of people find out about what we do. And your specific direct support through Patreon and Townsend's Plus and of course membership here on YouTube. Thank you so much. I hope you have a just killer weekend in a good way, obviously. And thanks for watching.